You made the decision that made sense with what you knew. The problem was never the decision. It was what you were never told before you made it. After you signed the lease, after you swiped the card, after you said yes to the loan because no one had ever explained what the loan actually meant. The feeling after. Not shame, something quieter than shame. The realization that the information existed, that other people had it, that no one thought to give it to you. They were not the last. 3 people who learned the hard way what nobody thought to teach them, and what it cost before they understood the lesson was available all along. There is a kind of financial mistake that has nothing to do with intelligence. It happens because knowledge is not distributed equally. Some people grow up in houses where money is discussed at the table, where someone explains what a savings rate is, what compound interest does, what happens when you carry a balance. And some people grow up in houses where money is a source of silence, or fear, or both. The first group learns the rules of the game before they sit down to play. The second group learns the rules by losing, usually alone, usually late, usually after the letter arrives. His name was Darnell, 31 years old when he opened his first retirement account. Not because he had not been working. He had been working since he was 16. Warehouses, kitchens, a call center for 3 years, then a logistics company that paid him more than anyone in his family had ever been paid. $41,000 a year. He remembered the first direct deposit. He stood in the parking lot of the distribution center and looked at his phone for a long time. He called his mother. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Baby, that is more than your grandfather ever made." He did not know what to say to that, so he just said, "I know." His mother had cleaned offices at night for 19 years. His grandmother had done laundry for other people's families. His grandfather had worked a furnace in a steel mill until his lungs would not let him anymore. In his family, money was not discussed, not because they were ashamed, not because they were hiding anything, because there had never been enough of it to be worth the conversation. He was 14 when he understood this completely. A letter had arrived, something official, something with numbers he did not understand. He had brought it to his mother. She had looked at it for a long time. She had not said anything. She had folded it, put it in a drawer, made dinner. He had understood then that the drawer was where things went that nobody knew how to handle. He had learned not to bring letters to his mother. He had also learned not to ask. Nobody had told him about retirement accounts. Nobody had explained what a 401k was. Nobody had mentioned that his employer would match up to 3% of everything he contributed. Free money. Waiting. He had signed the onboarding documents on his first day, 14 pages. A woman from HR had walked him through them in 20 minutes in a conference room that smelled of new carpet. Page 9. Retirement plan enrollment. Employee contribution rate, 0%. Employer match available, up to 3%. She had not stopped on page 9. She had not said, "This page is worth reading carefully." She had pointed. He had signed. They had moved on. She had done this 400 times. She knew which page most people did not read. Page 9 came and went in about 40 seconds. He signed. For 6 years, he did not touch it, not because he was irresponsible, because page 9 had looked exactly like every other page. What he did with the money was what he had always seen done with money. The first thing he bought was a jacket. He had seen it in a window the previous winter. He had stood outside in the cold and looked at it for about 4 minutes. He had calculated. He had walked away. The first week after the direct deposit, he went back. The jacket was still there. He bought it. He wore it out of the shop. He stood on the pavement and looked at his reflection in the window. A man in a jacket he had chosen and paid for without calculating first. He did not regret it. Not then. He spent it. Not recklessly, not on things that embarrassed him later. He bought his mother a used car. He paid off her credit card. He moved into an apartment that did not have mold on the bathroom ceiling. He bought things he had wanted since he was 12 years old and could not have. Shoes that cost more than a week's groceries. A television that filled a wall. He took his mother to dinner at a restaurant where the menus had no prices. He felt good about these things. He had worked for them. Nobody had taught him that there was a third category. Beyond earning. Beyond spending. Nobody had told him that money could work while he slept. That time was the ingredient. That starting late was the most expensive mistake a person could make without knowing they were making it. The moment that changed things was not dramatic. A coworker named Jerome mentioned his Roth IRA in the break room on a Thursday afternoon while they were both waiting for the microwave. Darnell asked what that was. Jerome looked at him, not with judgment, just quietly, the way someone recalibrates. He explained, slowly, without condescension. Darnell listened. Then he went home and sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and started reading. He read for 4 hours. At some point he stopped reading and just sat there, not with anger, with the specific feeling of someone who has just understood that a door existed they had been standing next to for 6 years without knowing it was there. He was 31. He had been earning real money since he was 25. 6 years. He did the calculation that night. If he had contributed 15% of his salary every year starting at 25, with the employer match, at a 7% average return, he would have had $62,000 sitting in an account he did not know existed. He looked at that number for a long time. $62,000. Not lost. Just never found. He closed the laptop. He sat very still. His hands were on the keyboard. He noticed them. He moved them to the table. They felt like they belonged to someone else. He turned the television on, then off, then on again. He did not watch it. He sat with the sound off and looked at the screen. He thought about his mother cleaning offices at night. He thought about his grandfather's lungs. He thought about the dinner where the menus had no prices. He did not regret the dinner. He just wished someone had told him both things were possible. He did not sleep well that night. The next morning he opened a spreadsheet. Not for his current contributions. For the 6 years he did not know. Month by month, year by year, what the account would have held if he had started at 25. He looked at it once. Then he closed it and never opened it again. Not because the number was wrong, because the number was right. He has not missed a contribution since. Darnell is still contributing every month without missing one. The second story starts with a woman and a number she did not understand until it was too late to understand it cheaply. Her name was Melissa, 26 years old when she looked at a credit card statement for the first time and read every line. Not just the minimum payment. Every line. She had grown up watching her mother use credit cards the way some people use weather. Inevitable, unremarkable, something you move through rather than understood. When the money ran out before the month did, her mother reached for the card. Not with guilt, with habit. Her mother had never explained what the card was doing on the other end. Because her mother did not fully know either. She knew the payment. She did not know the mechanism. But she had noticed something over the years. The balance never seemed to go down the way it should have. She had noticed. She had not known what to call it, so she had said nothing. Not every silence is a secret. Some silences are just the shape of what you do not have the words to explain. She was 11. A supermarket. A Tuesday. Her mother's card was declined at the checkout. The woman behind them said nothing, looked at her phone. Her mother had smiled, apologized, put back 3 items, paid for the rest in cash. Melissa had watched her mother's hands while she counted the notes. She had decided something in that queue. She had not known what she was deciding. She knew now. She had decided she would never be the woman putting things back. Melissa got her first card at 19, a student card, a $500 limit. It felt like safety. She remembered the first time she used it. A bookshop on campus, a Thursday afternoon. She needed 2 textbooks she could not afford before the next paycheck. She slid the card. The machine approved it in 2 seconds. She stood at the counter and felt something she had not expected to feel. Not relief. Belonging. Like she had finally been given the thing that other people had always had. She used it for textbooks in October. She used it for groceries in November, when her paycheck from the diner did not cover everything. She paid the minimum. The balance stayed. She did not think much about it. This was how it worked. This was how her mother had always done it. By 21, she had 3 cards. She did not think of it as opening cards. She thought of it as having backups. Her mother had always had a backup. When one was maxed, there was always another. That was not recklessness. That was planning. That was what she had learned, planning. The limits had grown as her credit score climbed, which she had understood as a reward. It was not a reward. It was an invitation to owe more. By 23, the balances had started doing something she did not understand. Growing. Even when she made payments. She told herself she was managing it. She made the minimum payments, sometimes a little more. She told herself that was responsible. Nobody had told her that minimum payments on high-interest debt were not responsibility. They were surrender. The Tuesday morning she sat down and read every line was the Tuesday after she was denied a car loan. The rejection letter used words she had to look up. Debt-to-income ratio, utilization rate, derogatory marks. She looked them up one by one. Then she went back to the statements. She had been looking at the minimum payment for 4 years. $25, $30, sometimes $40. She had been looking at the number that made the card feel manageable. She had never read the line above it. The one that said how much of each payment went to interest. The first card, minimum payment, $32. Interest charged that month, $61. She read it again. She had been paying $32. The card had been charging her $61. Every month she paid, the card grew. Not because she was not paying, because she was not paying enough to cover what it was taking. Then she pulled up her 3 statements. She found a piece of paper. She wrote down the balances. $7,400. $8,100, $7,600, $23,100. She put the pen down. She sat back in the chair. Her hands were still on the paper. She did not move them. The pen was still in her right hand. She had not noticed. She put it down, very carefully. The way you put something down when you are afraid of what happens if you make any sudden movement. She sat in the specific silence of someone who has just seen a number they have been successfully not seeing for 4 years. Then she looked at the interest rates. 22%, 24%, 19.9%. She did the math. She was paying approximately $460 every month in interest alone. Money that went nowhere, built nothing, returned nothing. $460 a month for a debt that had not existed when she was 19. She called her mother that evening. Not to blame her, because she needed to tell someone who would understand without requiring explanation. Her mother listened. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I thought that was just how it worked." Melissa said, "I did too." They were quiet for a while on opposite ends of the phone. Two people who had both been handed the same map and told it was normal. Neither of them had ever been told it was the wrong map. That another map existed. That some families had been using the other map for generations. And that the distance between the two maps could be measured in $23,100 and counting. Melissa is still paying it down, every month a little less. Every month she understands a little more clearly what the card company understood from the beginning. The third story starts with a man and a house and a payment that changed without warning in the second year. His name was Victor, 28 years old when he bought the house. The first person in his family to own property. His father had rented for 37 years. His grandfather had rented until he died. Victor understood in a way that went beyond money what this meant. The house was not just a house. He was 16. His father had been called to the landlord's office. Victor had waited outside, in the hallway, on a plastic chair. Through the door he could hear his father's voice. Not the words, the tone. The specific tone of someone agreeing to something they do not understand, because asking would cost them more than not knowing. His father had come out 15 minutes later. He had not looked at Victor. He had walked to the car. Victor had followed. In the car, his father had said, "It is fine." Victor had said, "Okay." Neither of them had believed it. He did not care. He walked through it twice with the realtor and made an offer the same afternoon. The realtor had seen this before. The specific way a first-generation buyer moved through a house. The way they touched the walls. The way they did not ask about insurance or taxes or escrow. She had learned not to overwhelm people with information they had not asked for. She closed the deal. That was her job. She was good at her job. His father came to see it the weekend before closing. He walked through every room slowly. He opened the kitchen cabinets. He stood in the backyard for a long time, looking at nothing in particular. On the way back to the car, he put his hand on Victor's shoulder and did not say anything. Victor understood. The mortgage broker was efficient, professional. The kind of man who had done this particular conversation thousands of times. He explained the monthly payment. $1,392. Victor wrote it down. He did not write down what PMI was, because the mortgage broker said it quickly between two other things and moved on. Victor's pen was already moving. He had a choice in that moment. He could stop. He could say, "I don't know what that means." He could ask. He had spent the last 6 months reading articles, watching videos, preparing. He had walked in that morning wanting to seem like someone who already knew. He did not ask because he did not want to seem like someone who did not know what PMI was. He was the first person in his family to buy a house. He was not going to ask questions that revealed that. He also did not know what an escrow account was. He did not know that his property taxes would be recalculated at the end of the first year. He did not know that his insurance premium would increase. He did not know that the number the broker said was not the number that would appear on the statement in month 13. Nobody told him. Not because they wanted to deceive him, because they assumed he knew. Because everyone they usually worked with already knew. Because in the houses where this knowledge lived, fathers had explained it to sons, and mothers had explained it to daughters, and it had never occurred to anyone that some people arrived at this table without the vocabulary. Victor signed, he initialed, he kept up. He did not want to be the only one still reading while everyone else had finished. All 47 pages, in a room with other people who were waiting for him to finish so they could move on to the next thing. A room where no one had said you should probably read page 31 carefully. He had not read them. Not because he was careless, because no one had told him that those 47 pages contained information that would change his life. They had handed him a pen and shown him where to sign, and he had signed. Because that is what you do when someone hands you a pen and shows you where to sign. When no one has ever taught you to stop and read first. He made the new payment work. It required things he had not planned to give. The gym membership canceled. The savings contribution paused. The dinners out reduced to once a month, then not at all. He stopped answering when friends asked if he wanted to come out. It was easier than explaining. For 11 months, he made it work. In the 12th month, the car needed a repair he had not budgeted for. He put it on a card. He sat in the parking lot of the mechanic and looked at the receipt. $840. He thought about his father, who had rented for 37 years and never had to learn what escrow was. He thought about the hand on his shoulder in the backyard. He thought about the drive to the closing. The letter arrived in November, a Tuesday. He was eating breakfast when he opened it. His escrow account had a shortage. His monthly payment was increasing by $455, effective the 1st of January. He read the letter twice. He put it on the kitchen table. He did not look at it the way you look at a surprise. He looked at it the way you look at something that was always going to arrive, that you just did not know was already on its way. $455. He got a piece of paper. He wrote 3 numbers down. The new payment, what he had saved, the distance between them. He folded the paper. He put it in his jacket pocket, not the drawer, his pocket. He needed to feel it there. Then he called the mortgage company. The woman on the phone was patient. She explained escrow. She explained the shortage. She explained the recalculation. Victor listened. He understood the words. What he did not understand was why no one had explained this before he signed. The woman said it was all in the disclosure documents. Victor had signed the disclosure documents. There were other people in the room, a couple to his left, an older man behind him. Everyone had their pen out. Everyone was signing. The notary moved through the pages the way someone moves who has done this 1,000 times. He had seen Victor before. Not Victor specifically, the specific way Victor held the pen, the specific way he did not ask questions, the specific way he kept up. The notary had a word for it. He never used it out loud. First generation. He kept moving. Page 1, sign here. Page 4, initial here. His father had come with him. He had sat in a plastic chair beside Victor and watched the notary place page after page in front of his son. He had watched Victor sign. 47 pages. His father had not read them either. Not because he was careless, because no one had ever told him that the documents needed reading. He thought about his father in the plastic chair, watching him sign. Neither of them had known what they were watching. There is a term researchers use for the gap between what different groups of people know about money. Financial literacy inequality. It does not mean that some people are smarter. It means that financial knowledge is transmitted informally, at kitchen tables, in conversations between parents and children, in the specific vocabulary of households where money is discussed openly. And it is not transmitted equally. Children who grow up in households where money is discussed are significantly more likely to understand compound interest. Credit utilization, the difference between a fixed and variable rate. Not because they are more capable, because someone explained it to them. The gap is not measured in knowledge. It is measured in the specific moment when someone who did not know sat in a room with someone who did and said nothing, because silence was cheaper than the look on someone's face when they realized you had never been taught. Nobody taught them. But they also did not ask. Not because they were careless, because asking would have meant admitting they did not know. And not knowing in a room full of people who did was the one thing they had spent their whole lives trying not to reveal. That is the cost nobody calculates. Not the interest, not the missed contributions. The price of pretending you already understood something nobody had ever explained. A number that makes this concrete. Someone who begins investing $200 a month at 22 years old, at 7% average annual return, will have approximately $702,000 at 65. Someone who begins the same contribution at 32 will have approximately $375,000. The difference is $327,000. Not from earning more, not from taking more risk, from knowing 10 years earlier that the option existed. Darnell lost 6 of those years. Melissa is still paying for the years she spent not understanding what the card was doing. Victor is still learning the vocabulary of a system he was handed a pen to sign before he understood it. None of them failed. They were handed a test without being given the textbook. And the test has a cost, whether you knew about it or not. Darnell is still contributing every month without missing one. He called his younger brother last year, sat with him for an afternoon, explained the 401k, explained the match, explained what compound interest does over 30 years. His brother was 23. Halfway through the afternoon, he stopped talking and just looked at his brother. His brother was listening the way Darnell had listened in the break room. He understood then what Jerome must have felt. He thought about how much a conversation in a break room can cost when it happens 6 years late. He made sure his brother's conversation happened now. Melissa paid off the first card 8 months ago. She keeps the statement in her kitchen drawer. Not as a reminder of the debt, as a reminder of what she did not know and what knowing cost her. She will sit with her daughter at the kitchen table. She will open a statement. She will point to the line above the minimum payment. the one nobody pointed to for her. Victor refinanced last spring. He read every page of the new disclosure documents, all 53 of them. He asked questions that made the mortgage officer pause. He did not care. He signed when he understood, not before. He goes to his nephew's school now on financial literacy days. He stands in front of children who are 12 and 13 years old and explains what escrow is, what PMI is, what happens to a credit card balance when you only pay the minimum. He explains it slowly, because someone should have. This is what gets passed now. Not the debt, not the ignorance, the silence around both. There is a specific conversation that happened in some houses and not in others, about money, about what it means, about what happens when it runs out, about what to do before it does. In the houses where it happened, the children grew up knowing. In the houses where it did not, the children grew up guessing. And some of those parents are still asking why their children cannot manage money, why they are always in debt, why they have nothing saved, why they do not know what they should have known by now. The children know why. They just cannot say it to the person who needs to hear it. They were not invited. They also did not knock. Not because they did not want in, because nobody had told them there was a door.